So this next email came from a man from Alaska, native guy from Alaska. And I'll tell you what, if I could encourage any of you to go visit anywhere, it's 100% Alaska. I love Alaska. Alaska is absolutely amazing. And you know, you've seen a lot of my backgrounds where I hunt and fish and live. I mean, British Columbia is nothing to laugh at, but we have some stunning, beautiful. Let's face it, the whole planet's got stunning, beautiful places in nature. But Alaska is something else. If you can, do one of those coastal cruises and check it out, man. It's Alaska's just amazing. And this is an interesting encounters, experiences relayed to us through this guy. Definitely appreciate him doing this. And you know, coincidentally, just point out a couple things. I'm standing here. That valley right behind me leads up to that's the Duffy Lake Highway behind me. It goes up, cuts up through that valley, and it comes out through Lillooet, BC, and then you cross the Fraser River. And that timber up to the left, up in that, my left facing that way, your left, up in those left-hand slopes, where a friend of mine ran into one of these things right there while deer hunting. And then a native guy from our community right here next to where I live, I ran into him in the woods, and we had a good conversation. And he was telling me how he ran into them twice at Joffrey Lakes, which is just up around the corner of that snow-capped peak on the right-hand side of the valley right there. And then as you go on through to Duffy Lake, up in the crotch of that valley, up over the hill, you know, another friend of mine, his grandfather in Duffy Lake, and they saw one get up at the end of the lake and walk away in the meadow. It's just endless. It's endless, 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 one after the other. And again, a lot of you people that may be frustrated from me sharing these stories nonstop, and they want me to get back to hunting and fishing, well, you're going to have to realize that these stories shared with us are from hunters and fishermen, about 99% of the time. No way getting out of it. And there's many of us who deserve the right to know, and there's absolutely all of us that deserve the right to know factual encounters and factual knowledge from the people that have seen these things firsthand. Okay? That's what we're about, and that's what we're doing. Supporting each other and offering up information and knowledge for people that are lacking of it, frustrated, scared, and don't have it. So, on that note, I'm going to carry on and read another one. Listen to this. Hello, Steve. I have numerous stories of different topics. For example, UFOs, orbs, little people, the hybrid beast man, and the hairy people. Since this website is for Bigfoot encounters, I'll just tell the stories to the best of my recollection related to this topic. Story 1. My first memory as a young child hearing a Bigfoot was from my late grandmother back in the early 1980s. She was Yupik, native from Bristol Bay, Alaska. Native traditions and knowledge are passed on orally from elders to the next generation. We are taught to respect our elders, so what our elders told us we listened to and accepted as a lesson or an actual fact. One day my grandmother told us about the hairy people with cone heads. She said, if you ever see these people, do not look them in the eyes and turn around and run to safety. They like to take children that stray too far from home. Story 2. In the later 80s, my half-brother came to Alaska to visit. At this time in his life, he had become a Buddhist monk. He had previously spent 4 years at a Buddhist monastery overseas in another country. We talked a lot about different things and his views in the world and life. One day a topic came up about different dimensions and supernatural beings. He told me that Bigfoot is real and there are different types of these beings, some generally peaceful and some evil. They are supernatural beings that are able to cross between different realms or dimensions. Story 3. In about 2005, I was in Homer, Alaska, and we were planning a hunting trip. I remember asking some locals at a Ketchimak gear shed store about possibly hunting south of Homer. An elder man walked up to me and said, do not hunt south of Seldovia. I asked him why. He then said with a serious, frightened look on his face, hairy giant. I asked him to please tell me more about this. The following is what I can remember him telling me. Some years ago, he and some friends were hunting around an area near the abandoned town of Portlock or Port Chatham. They were traveled south by boat down the Cook Inlet towards the south end of the Kenai Peninsula. They anchored offshore and rowed a skiff onto the beach. They were inland and made a base camp. The next day they were hunting, and that evening they took a moose. They gutted and opened the chest cavity to cool. They decided to come back early in the morning and prepare the moose for packing out. That night at camp felt weird, like they were being watched. He couldn't sleep well. Before morning light, they were off to the moose kill to begin the pack out. On the way, they came upon a large tree that had been pulled out of the ground and rammed upside down into the ground. This frightened them because it wasn't there the day before. They hurried to the moose kill site, only discovered that the entire moose was gone. Even the gut pile was missing. There was no drag marks. There was only what appeared to be very huge tracks sunken fairly deep into the ground. They all were scared and ran back to base camp. They only took what they could quickly cram into the backpacks and left everything else. They never went back there ever again. Story 4. I was hunting for moose in an area between Seward and Cooper Landing on the Kenai Peninsula years ago. I've hunted the area before and only had some problems previously with bears in that area. One evening I was making some moose calls to see if I could entice a bull into my hunting area. All of a sudden I heard what sounded like a big tree being knocked down. Then I heard what sounded like something forcibly hitting a tree with another big tree 4 times. The sound was scary because I knew whatever was doing this had immense power. I've heard brown bears break trees, big bull moose break trees, and rake their antlers on brush. Nothing in all my previous years in the wilderness have I had anything as frightening as this. I was in fight for your life mode. I was scared and decided to make a stand rather than run as best my option. My Kimber Montana 300 WSM rifle, I got the exact same one, seemed inadequate for what sounded like an angry elephant nearby. It would be dark soon, so I decided that my best chance would be to find the biggest spruce tree that I could climb up. I raced back to my spike camp and gathered my gear. I quickly found a big spruce tree that was about 80 feet tall. I tied a rope around my backpack and rifle, and I started up the tree. About 20 feet up the tree, I stopped, pulled my pack and rifle up. After securing my backpack, I then put on my cold weather gear. Then I put my rifle on and climbed upwards to about the 50-foot height of the tree. I stayed up all night long in that tree. I was not going to the ground alone in that darkness. The next morning at first light, I descended the tree and left the area. I knew that whatever made the loud sounds the evening before was huge and possessed enormous power. I returned to this area to hunt. I rarely hunt alone anymore. I carry a .375 H&H with 300 grain bullets as a minimum for protection everywhere I go hunting now. Story 5. About 6 years ago, a friend was helping construct a kayak camp near Bear Glacier. This is south of Seward in the Kenai Peninsula. He told me he felt uneasy out there. He was like being watched. One night, he heard something huge in the woods walking around his tent. It sounded like a huge human and was purposely making noise. He told his foreman of what he heard, and his foreman told him it was just a bear. The next night, while in his tent, he seen something pushing on the tent from the outside with what he described as a huge finger. He freaked out and pulled a shotgun. Whatever was outside the tent took off with such force it made the ground tremor as it ran. It made a huge splashing sound when it hit the river. It covered good distance across the rough terrain and through a big river in just seconds. My friend swears it was no bear. He left as soon as he could and never returned. In conclusion, these stories are of the best of my memory and are the truth. Whether supernatural or human-like, these beings exist. It seems to me that in or around Kenai Peninsula National Parks seems to have more activity of this nature. Could there be a connection between national parks and encounters of Bigfoot? I still like the wilderness. I'm just more cautious and always travel with a weapon. Thanks, Nick. Well, thank you, Nick, for sharing your stories. I find them real interesting, and I'm glad you shared them, especially coming from Alaska. I love hearing from Alaska, and I especially love hearing from the First Nations people. Can't get enough, actually, because that's all, as far as I'm concerned, the best information you can get. And like I said, you know, I actually, when I go back in my memory, just a few years back, I flew up to Alaska, rented a vehicle, and drove the highway to get to Seward, and actually bailed into the mountains there on the left. And I hiked up into the mountains and brought some trail cameras with me, and I set one. I've done that a few times. This one particular time, I hiked up this side of this mountain forever, basically swam over top of willow buckbrush, straight uphill forever. And I found this one secluded little spot with sheep fur all over the place. And I figured, wow, what a cool place to leave some cameras. And I think I left 4 in there. And I left them for a year, and I came back, and every single one of them was gone. And it was kind of weird because I felt that where I did this, I didn't think there would ever be a human being would swim through all that willow to get up there first off, and then pick that one particular tree to go target, climbing underneath it, and then finding those cameras. It's just bizarre. It is what it is. But yeah, I'm familiar with Alaska, that's for sure. But anyway, if any of you could, if you feel you need to, make sure you email me at sharemystory@howtohunt.com or tellmystory@howtohunt.com. And if you want to get something off your chest, you have some factual evidence you want to share, or you want to expose some real nasty things that have been going on from some not so good characters, you can email it to me, and we will get to it and we will share it. All right. It's funny. There's a good handful of people that have felt that they need to report things to me that some particular groups and social media groups are doing, and they're almost treating me like I'm some kind of Bigfoot police or something, which I'm not. And it is what it is with a lot of these people. They're just plain opportunists. One emails came into me just recently, alerting me in a way to the fact that there is some group in Minnesota. They're actually charging people $150 an hour to take them into the forest for a so-called Sasquatch encounter, or whatever you want to call it. And I guess you can up your end to $500 to out on a couple hours. And you know what? It's not really a crime. I mean, if there's people out there that are gullible and willing to give these people their money, so be it. What are you going to do about it? But I guess the other shitty thing on the other side of the coin is these people are only adding to this topic being a joke for many, many people, right? I mean, they definitely aren't doing anything good for the people out there who need answers or support. You know what I mean? They're out there to take money. Is what it is. If people didn't give them money, well, they wouldn't be around, would they?